Ever since humans could build, well, they've built weapons. Some of them became a part of history, while others were relegated to the reject bin. I'm Mike with List 25, and let's jump right into today's list with a weapon that sounds like it belongs in a video game. Ever look at a double-barrel shotgun and thought, 2 barrels just isn't enough? Well, American Tactical has solved your problem. In 2025, they unleashed the ATI 12-gauge triple-barrel shotgun, and the thing is a beast. At first glance, it looks like your regular, everyday shotgun, but when you get a closer look, you see its side-by-side barrels with a third on top, and those 30-inch barrels pack the kind of punch you'd expect. It really is a thing of beauty, even if it is a little over the top. The purpose of the triple-barreled shotgun is pretty obvious, unlike the next weapon, which seems completely useless in a battle. The dummy tank. Fragile, easy to destroy, and definitely not hurricane-proof. But it did have a very specific purpose during the First and Second World Wars, and, well, they did their job perfectly. Their purpose was simple: make the enemy believe that an entire army was sitting and wait. During the First World War, they were made up of wooden frames and cloth, but by World War II, they were upgraded to more realistic and inflatable models. Although dummy tanks and other vehicles were only effective from a distance, they fooled the enemy on many occasions and were a crucial part of Allied tactics. From a weapon meant to be seen to a weapon you won't see coming at all. The US Navy developed a weapon like nothing you've ever seen before, and this thing is fast. Officially known as the 8 megajoule electromagnetic railgun, the weapon is designed to be fired from naval vessels, and it can shoot its payload at Mach 8, which is 5,000 miles an hour. It uses electromagnetic energy to accelerate its projectile along electronically charged parallel rails and towards its target at over 8 times the speed of sound. It can be used for anti-aircraft and anti-missile defense, but also has another potential use: to send a rocket into orbit. Deadly doesn't always have to be big, like the whip weapon we're going to take a look at next. Technically, it's not actually a whip. It's a sword, but it's become known as the whip sword over the years. It hails from India and consists of super sharp edges made from sharpened steel. It's designed to be secretly worn around the waist, ready to take an enemy by surprise. To use the Urumi takes agile movements and the grace of a ballet dancer, as its sharp edges could easily cause heavy damage to any user who fails to wield it properly. Sounds like a fun way to get a free shave. A whip sword has nothing on this next weapon, which just plain stinks. In May 2024, South Korea noticed an unusual sight coming from across the border: giant balloons. South Korea realized the balloons were carrying trash, and lots of it. Waste paper, manure, cigarette butts, and even parasites were dumped on unsuspecting towns and cities. Although there's no real damage from the balloons, the smell cannot be pleasant, and has been seen as a form of psychological warfare. In retaliation, the South Korean government decided to start pumping propaganda messages through huge speakers at the border, and more humorously, they played them lots and lots of K-pop. But if K-pop isn't enough to make you lose your head, well, the next weapon certainly is. The Flying Guillotine is the stuff of a legend. It was first used during the reign of the Qing dynasty, but the finer details are, well, a little sketchy. It's believed the weapon was made up of a disc, which had razor-sharp edges and was attached to a chain or rope. It could be thrown towards an enemy, decapitating them by complete surprise. Sounds like Kung Lao's hat. Now, from China to India, where they created one of the most effective battering rams of all time. Elephant warfare is believed to have started in ancient India as far back as the 6th century BCE. The sheer sight of huge armies of elephants charging towards you must have been enough to scare any soldier. And that was part of the appeal. They were as effective as they were intimidating, and became a familiar sight in battlefields all across Asia. Coming up, a more conventional-looking weapon, which works in a very unconventional way. This beast of a firearm punches well above its weight class, and can go toe-to-toe with the best. Its unique design means it recoils backward instead of upward, so it's a lot more accurate than you'd think. Even weirder, the Chiappa Rhino fires its round from the bottom barrel instead of the top, making it one of the most unconventional weapons on today's list. Now we move on to a weapon that can have a devastating effect on an enemy without firing a single bullet. We live in a world of ever-advancing technology, and with that technology comes the opportunity to use it in warfare, even if that warfare is from behind a computer screen. Cyber mercenaries are nothing new, but they are being utilized more and more by the military. They can collect data, commit international espionage, and even weaken military capabilities by introducing harmful software, and, well, all for the right price. Another weapon that likes to remain hidden is up next, and it's as deadly as it is compact. World War II was a breeding ground for military invention, but not all those inventions were a success, like the British Army's version of the mini submarine. It was only 20 feet in length, but carried a devastating 500-pound warhead. That warhead was designed to magnetically attach to the hull of a naval vessel, but in the end it was unsuccessful and never put into mass production. From the small to the gigantic, with a weapon that belongs in a comic book. Although this World War II weapon never actually existed, its sheer size makes it worth a mention. This thing would eclipse the heaviest tank ever built, the Panzer VII. At 1,000 tons of steel, armor, and weaponry, the Ratte could intimidate an enemy from across the battlefield. Its armor would be 14 inches thick in places, but despite winning the approval of Adolf Hitler himself, the Ratte never made it to the production line, which was a blessing to the rest of the world. Of course, after the war was over, things got even bigger. In 1957, the US Air Force wanted to know if the heat generated from a nuclear reactor would power a ramjet engine enough to fire a supersonic missile. This would become known as Project Pluto, and if it worked, it would give whoever owned it a significant advantage over their enemies. Its supersonic projectile would travel at 2,500 miles an hour, and even more terrifying, it was able to fly as low as 500 meters, making it impossible to detect. The testing was extremely successful, but advancing technology meant that it became outdated pretty quickly. The project was canceled in 1964 after a total cost of over $2 billion in today's money. Not to be beaten, the Russians have developed their own kind of superweapon that could hit targets no one else could reach. In 2018, an anonymous source leaked the news to the Western media that Russia had developed a plane-mounted laser that could destroy a satellite in space. I mean, it sounds like the plot of a spy movie, but this weapon is very real, and it isn't a new concept. It's based on the Soviet-era Beriev A-60, which was a gas-powered laser fitted to a cargo plane. This brand new laser would also be fitted to an aircraft and would be able to target American satellites. Very little is known about the project, but it sounds like the future of warfare could happen in orbit. And back on ground level, there's a tank that lost its head. When the German army needed a multi-purpose vehicle, they turned to the Goliath. It was small, only at around 5 feet in length, but had the capability to cause serious damage. It could be used to clear the road or to destroy bridges or buildings, but their main downside was they could only be used once, as when the Goliath detonated, its warhead was rendered useless. A much more useful weapon up next, as we take a look at one of the most iconic combat helicopters around. The AH-1F is a legendary piece of equipment that's instantly recognizable, fast, and as deadly as they come. It became famous during the Vietnam War, but with its fancy array of weapons, including a chin-mounted minigun, grenade launcher, and anti-tank missiles, it became a staple of the US military. Sadly, it's long since retired, but variants are still used by the Marine Corps to this day. Another aerial weapon up next, but one that can take out more than one target at a time. A multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle, or MIRV, isn't really a vehicle at all. It's a ballistic missile, and it carries a payload that can take out an entire army. It was designed in the 60s when someone realized that one nuclear warhead just wasn't enough. As well as carrying multiple warheads, the MIRV also had the capability to fire these warheads independently of each other, targeting separate locations. When MIRVs made their debut in 1970, they were a major success and gave the US a significant advantage over their opponents. A far less successful weapon is next, but one that had so much potential. In the second half of World War II, Germany was suffering big losses in the skies and needed a new weapon to help defend their ground forces from an aerial attack. They came up with the Kugelblitz, an armored tank packing 2 anti-aircraft guns. If the Germans played their cards right, it would be the answer to their problems. But things didn't go well, and at best they managed to produce 5 Kugelblitz tanks before the end of 1944, but by then it was too little, too late. That brings me onto a weapon that became the star of its own movie. You might have seen the ominously titled K-19, The Widowmaker, starring Harrison Ford. It's the story of a nuclear submarine that suffered a catastrophic accident and released dangerous radiation. Well, the movie is based on real life, after K-19 ran into trouble in 1961 when its cooling system apparently stopped working. The captain had to improvise a makeshift coolant pipe, but at the cost of several of his men's lives. The coolant problem was fixed, but the crew that fixed it were to suffer from severe radiation poisoning and a painful death. A hand weapon next, but one that shouldn't be underestimated. These things were brutal on the battlefield, despite their somewhat comedic look. It resembles a paddle or a baseball bat, but don't let its appearance fool you. Those are razor-sharp blades along the edge, making it devastating in close combat. The Macuahuitl was so good in battle that it became a popular choice from the Aztecs to the Mayans. Another weapon that was effective in close combat next, and a weapon that could help you claw your way to victory. Ancient India knew how to make its handheld weapons, and the Bagh Nakh was no exception. Inspired by big cats, its name literally means tiger's claw. It can be worn over the knuckles, or even concealed in the palm of your hand, and can slash through skin and muscle with ease. It was a popular weapon among the Nihang Sikhs, who would keep it hidden under their turbans until they were ready to attack. Now we take a look at another claw-like weapon, but with a different purpose altogether. The Chinese-made Zhua might look like the most awesome back scratcher you've ever seen, but in combat, it had a bigger use. Armed with the Zhua, a soldier could claw an enemy's shield and rip it from their hands. Once the enemy was open to attack, it could be used to claw away at the enemy, targeting their face. Onto a weapon that was much slower to use, and a danger to anyone who dared enter it. The problem with the Saint-Chamond were its tracks were just too small for its massive body. It was only the second tank produced by the French in the First World War, and it looks like they really missed the mark. It was slow, heavy, and nobody wanted to be assigned to one. Thankfully, later models were better designed and much more effective. The next weapon on our list wasn't just fit for its purpose, it was fit for a king. When Henry VIII built the Mary Rose naval vessel, it was the pride of his ever-increasing fleet. It was huge at a whopping 600 tons. It was by no means the largest ship in the fleet, but it was picked as the admiral's flagship during the Battle of St. Matthew in 1512. Sadly, she was lost at sea in 1545 after over 30 years of service. This next weapon wouldn't be in service as long, or share the same success as the Mary Rose. The early flamethrowers made during World War I were hit and miss at best. The Grossflammenwerfer was sadly one of the latter. It was designed for use in the trenches, but was too heavy to be moved. Although its hose could get close to the enemy, its bulk eventually went against it, and more portable models were later introduced. But few weapons have outdone the next on today's list, as we go out with a bang. Officially known as the M28, you might know this next Cold War weapon as the Davy Crockett nuclear mortar. It came with a W-54 nuclear warhead. It was small enough to be operated on the battlefield and powerful enough to cause a lot of damage, with a range of up to 2.5 miles. It was eventually retired after never being used in combat. Well, we made it. So, let's see what you learned with a quick question. In the movie K-19, The Widowmaker, Harrison Ford plays the ill-fated vessel's captain. But which other famous actor plays his executive officer? Is it A, Alec Baldwin, B, Denzel Washington, or C, Liam Neeson? Give me your answers in the comments. And if you had as much fun as I did on today's list, then there are plenty more for you to enjoy, like 25 insane security features of the White House. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're always in the loop. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.